Welcome back, everybody, to another Office API tutorial. We are going to be covering a very important topic today, especially for those people who want to go out and use the Excel Office API. We're going to be covering how to work with ranges. This will be a multi-part series just because there's a lot we can do with it when it comes to selecting ranges, when it comes to changing positions, working with the values in ranges, changing the values, changing the formatting. There is a ton we can do with ranges in the Office API. One thing we do have to kind of understand, though, is sometimes we're going to have to change maybe how we work with it a little bit, just because it's not going to be a straight jump from VBA. There's some things that are going to be looking a little bit different, but I'm going to walk you through it. Hopefully when you look at it, you're not going to be freaking out going like, oh my God, this is too complicated. And we're going to see some of the new features they've added into it. So pretty exciting stuff. So if you haven't already, you want to make sure that you open up your Script Lab add-in, and then you can just do a blank snippet. That should be fine. And then you should have an empty little function like this. And then everything should be good to go. And then also, if you want, you can open up your run pane. I'm going to narrow it down a little bit so that way it's not taking up too much space. First thing that you want to do is whenever we're working with ranges, we need to define the sheet that the range is currently on. In this example, I just want to work with the active sheet that I'm currently working out of. So in this case, it would be sheet 2. To do that, it's pretty straightforward. You're just going to take your context object. You're going to go into the workbook property, then the worksheets collection, and then there is a method called getActiveWorksheet, which then itself returns a worksheet object that represents the current worksheet that you're on. So the current one being the one that you can see in my Excel application window. Then from here, you can start actually taking the ranges. So let's just do a really basic range selection. So what we're going to do is grab a range using getRange. Allergy season is in full force and it's driving me crazy. Just gonna throw that out there. So we're gonna use the getRange method. This does take a string that represents a cell address. It's A1, basically like the A1 normal address representation. I don't know what the exact formulation is, but that's basically the one it takes here. So in this example, it would be, let's just say A1 to, I don't know, was that C7? C7. So that defines the range. Then from here, you can actually start doing things like selecting, getting certain properties and things along that nature. I'm going to focus just on selecting. We're not going to work with a lot of the properties at this point. I just want to focus on selecting. So we call the select method. We put our semicolon, and then bam, we run it. It selects the range of cells. Looks good, looks fine. What we can also do with the getRange method is we can also define a name range. So I don't know if I have a name range in this one. I don't think on this one. Let me do this. Let me just select these range of cells and define a name. I'll give it something, my new range or something like that, right? So we can take this same idea of just using the getRange method, and we're just going to put in the name of that range. So we're going to say my new range. It's still the same. We're still selecting it. And then again, to kind of demonstrate it, you can tell it's just going over and selecting that range. So pretty useful. I think that definitely will come in handy when we have name ranges that maybe we want to export or something along that nature. So that's using the getRange method. Let's also look at using getRange by indexes. This is actually a cool one. This is a new one that they added, and I like it. I think it's pretty useful. So grab a range using indexes. Note to yourself, remember, it is 0 based. You start at 0. You do not start at 1. So we define the sheet, and then we're going to say getRange by indexes, and let's take a look at the parameters. We have a start row, a start column, a row count, and a column count. And they also do know here that it is 0 index. So let's say I want to select row 1, column 1, row 7, and then what is that, column 3? Well, no, 0, 1, 2. See, I'm gonna throw myself off on this one. I think it would be 0 then. Hold on, let me change. I'm gonna put it 0, 0 and see if that does the right one. So it would just be like that. You have 4 parameters. It's just defining the range. And then from here, you would just be selecting it like normal. Let's see if that works. Okay, so it worked. I need to go out. Oh, so it looks like the row is 0 base, but not the column. So the column is 3. Okay, that makes sense. Oh, no. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. 0 to 3, and then 0 to 7. Okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. So you start at 0, you add 7 to get to 7. You start at 0, you add 3 to get to 3. Okay, so it starts at 0, but then to get to the column that you want, you just add the number of columns. I'm sure that's going to throw me off for a couple videos. I'll start doing them like counting in my head. So that's just using get range by indexes. Now, obviously, we can see with this one, we could define some variables up here. We could do a lot of different things, especially like, for example, if we were going to be working with an API, we didn't know what the range size was going to be. We could now leverage potentially the object that's sent back to us, and maybe do a count, something along that nature. So I really like this method. This is something that we didn't really have in VBA, but it does make selecting kind of more dynamic ranges, I would say, easier. But, I guess it kind of just depends on the person. Okay. So let's do something else. Let's get the used range. So grab the used range. So we'll say sheet.get used range. You're going to see two different used range. There's get used range and get used range or null object. The get used range, basically with this one, if I was reading it correctly, it basically sends back an error request if something doesn't add up right, where the other one, if there's an error, it just returns a null object. So that was kind of how I read it. It's in the documentation. Again, there wasn't really an example where they were doing it with it, but from what I was reading, it seemed like if there was an error when it came to selecting, the null object just returns that null object. So that's kind of how they were describing it. And so then again, we would just do select. You can see it did the used range, and then just for completeness, we will do the other method as well, or null object. Perfect. And you'll see this one again gives us the same exact result. It just gives us the used range. So nothing hopefully right there was kind of hopefully getting anything. Something to note though, for example, if you use get range and you don't specify an address, it does select the entire worksheet. So grab the entire worksheet range. So with this one, if I did sheet.get range and I don't actually specify anything, and then I was to select it, it selects the entire worksheet. So that is if you wanted to do something where I don't know really why you would want to select the entire worksheet. I mean, maybe you were going to copy it, but there's like 5 different ways to copy it, and I think there's easier ones than that. But just so you guys know, if you use get range and you don't specify anything, it will select the entire worksheet, just so you guys are aware that does happen. What was the next one? Sheet, get range, get use range, range. Oh, get ranges. That was the other one. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this one right now because I'm still getting a little bit familiar with it. But with this one, it's a new type of object they've added, and it's range areas. So you can basically have multiple rectangular ranges that you define. The only thing is you can't actually select these ranges, but you can define them, and then you can manipulate them down the road. So for example, I don't know, maybe I want to do A1 to A5, and I wanted to have B1 to B5. I would do it like that. And then from here, you could do something like maybe a cell count or something like that. So let me just do this. Let me define it. So we'll say let multi-range equal. Again, let is saying that it potentially could change down the road. And then from here, what we'll do is we will define a property about that load range. So we'll do like a cell count, right? So define a multi-range, And then what we'll do is we'll take our multi-range object, and then we'll call the load method. And then there's a property called cell count that returns, you guessed it, the number of cells in that particular range. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to console log the multi-range dot cell count. Now, there is one final thing that I got to do before I just run this. I need to do await context.sync. And I talked about this in previous videos. This is basically making sure it loads the property before we actually go and request it. And so that should be what, 10 cells? Yeah, 10 cells. So it looks like it did do it. So if you see right over here in my console, there are 10 cells. There's lots that we can do with it. I'm still getting familiar with that object myself. So there probably will be a video on this particular series where I'll be working with it. But just so everyone's aware, there is a new object. It's called getRanges. It defines multiple ranges at once. And there's different things we can now do with it. We can count the number of rectangular ranges, all sorts of different stuff. But cool stuff. I think it's cool stuff. Let's do one other one. We'll take the name. No, we'll take this one. I'm going to do this one. We're going to define this range. And I just want to show you some certain things that I think would be useful to know. So we'll just say let, I don't know, my range equal that. And we're going to show you different things that we can select about our range. So if you look down here, you can see a lot of different things. You can get cell properties, get columns, get entire column, things along that nature. And then what you can do is you can select that. I hope that's the one that works. So what this does is it takes all the columns in that range and it selects literally the entire column. So that's something new. We didn't have that in VBA. They really focused on making selecting stuff a lot easier, which I'm not entirely complaining about because that was kind of a pain sometimes when we had to do it. We had to do like 6 or 7 lines in some really extreme cases. But you can see here they have these built-in methods where we can do things like get all their columns, get the entire columns. We can get the entire rows. Let's see what other ones they have. My range. Get columns after. What does this one take? So if I say optional, the number of columns to include in the resulting range. In general, use a positive number to create a range outside the current range. You can also use a negative number to create a range within the current range. The default value is 1. So if I do 2 and I was to select that, what would that give us? So it selects 2 columns outside the range. That's actually kind of neat. That's neat. I didn't think they could do that. Get columns after. So positive outside the range, negative inside the range. So if I do -1, it should, I would imagine, I hope that doesn't give me an error. Okay, so that gives me 1. So if I do 1, that's inside the range. 2 would be that. Okay. 3. And I'm sure if I put 4 in here, it's going to give me an error, I would imagine. Yeah, I think that's why. Entire row. Well, that's kind of weird that I did 3. So 2 is fine, but 3 is not okay. That's kind of strange. So that's getting columns after. So I'm sure that if we did my range, get, where is it? Get rows above, get rows below. That's kind of nice. That's actually really nice. Get rows below. I'm again assuming count. So rows below if I want 1. Negative numbers is within your range. Positive is outside your range, it looks like. So if I do select, it looks like that would take me outside. If I do inside, 1. Okay, and I'm just going to change this temporarily to start at B1. So that way I can do get rows below. So get rows above. And then what this one's going to do, get rows above, and then that one should get that one. Okay. If I do 1, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I wonder what that one does. Okay, so the number of rows to include in the resulting range in general, use a positive number, to create a range outside the current range. You can also use a negative number to create a range within it. The default value is 1. So if I put 1 in here, it seems, let me just change it, takes me inside. So it takes me to the bottom row, it looks like. If I do -1, it takes me 1 row above. Yeah, so that makes sense. So that's kind of weird, though. That seems like it would be the other way around, but I don't know. Maybe that's how they want to do it. So, well, now we know. So we'll say get rows above. Oh, and I just realized I spelled that. It's not rows above, it's row below. All right. So there's that one. I'm going to change that back to A1. And then from here, we'll do my range dot get columns before. Okay, so this kind of all makes sense. We've done this. Get entire row, get entire column, get intersection, get last cell. Oh, that's kind of nice, right? Remember how we had to do that in multi? Look at that. Oh, yeah. That is cool. I think that's cool. I'm sure other people are probably going like, why is he so excited about these little things? Sometimes you got to be excited by the last little things. So if that's the last cell, then we should be able to get the last row. We can get the last row. And then we can also do get the last column. Get the last columns. We can also do a select on this one. Last column. I'm liking it. Microsoft did a good job on this one. They kind of listened, it looks like. Get the last row. I just remember how it used, it was never really a pain to do it, but it was just, you always kind of wish they had something to just make it a one-liner and you never had to really worry about it. This one, you're not using any of the constants or anything like that. You're just kind of basically taking these built-in methods and it just knows. Rows above, rows, yeah, let me do this. My range, get row. So if I wanted to and I want to get the second row, right? So I would just, well, in this case, it would be the second row. So I'd pass through 1. So I would just do it like that. And then with this one, it gets me the second row because it's 0 based too. So this one would be get a specific row. Remember 0, comma, well, not time on 0 based. And then my range get column. And again, this is also 0 based. So if I put 0, it should return the first column. And then select that. Whoa, what happened there? Like jump down. Okay, so there you go. Cool. I'm liking it so far. Get a specific column. Remember, 0 dash based. All right, my range, get columns, get entire column, get entire row, get image. I don't think I can do an intersection because there's nothing there. Get rows. I might do these offset ones just to see kind of how they work. Okay, let's do this. Get offset range. Let's see what this one takes. Offset number is 1. Okay, so number of rows. So if I want 1 row below and then 1 column to the right. Yeah. And then I want to select that new range. And so this one should just, perfect. Okay, so yeah, just offset it down 1 and then over 1 column. That makes sense. So get offset range. And they had this. I mean, this was they had this in VBA. See, now it's like I'm going to be getting like, oh, get resized ranged. I remember that one. Yeah. So we can just say, I don't know, I want to increase it by 2 rows and I want to increase it by 3 columns, and then we will select that new range. Cool. You guys should be an expert at this by the end of that. I mean, you should be get resized range. Wow, we've done a lot so far. Intersection. Let me do this. Let me see if I can do 100. Control Enter, and then I will do A1 to E11. Is that E11? And then this way I should be able to get, praying to God there's no errors because I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Get intersection. Okay. And then I want to select that intersection once you guys got it. That's the important part. Why is it not letting me do it? Oh, gets the range object that represents the given range. Another. Oh, interesting. So this is a little bit different. So if I do C7 and then what is that? E11? E11. And I do that. So I shouldn't have to change this. I should just be able to leave this as so. So that would be C7. And then this should select the intersect. Oh, cool. I like that. Get the intersection. Takes a second range as an argument. Okay, so my range, and then I'm assuming just like the other one, get ranged or null object. So basically, if there's something that goes wrong, it doesn't return anything. It's just going to come back with nothing. But I think with that being said, well, what's this one? Get absolute resize range. Well, get cell. We'll do this. Get cell. So I want cell. Let's see, 0 index. So I want cell. What is that? 2, and then the second column. So that should be B3 if I'm doing the math in my head right. Sometimes. Yeah, okay, so that got B3. That's like, okay, so get cell, get a specific cell in that range. What was the other one? That one's on the first one, the my range, get absolute resized range. So what's this one? The number of rows in the new range size. Let me just do this and see what happens. I haven't tried this one, so I don't know what I haven't. Huh. Oh. Okay, that makes sense. So that one's kind of like the reverse of get resized range. It almost seems like it's just taking an inner portion of it. So I'm imagining if I put this to 4, would it give us an error? No, it doesn't give us an error. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So it's just actually like resizing. It's just taking it, and it's taking just a resized one. Okay. Get resized range. I like to think the inner one, but it's not exact. That's just a note to myself. My range, and then we can also do get bounding rectangle. What is this? Another range, the range object or address of, or range name. So if I do, I don't know, let me just do E13. Let's see what this one does, and we'll do a select. Okay, yeah, so I think it just finds that next cell, and then it just basically builds range. It kind of goes out to that specific cell. I'm imagining if I do E13 to, what is it, E15. Would that give me anything very different? I don't think so. Yeah, so just, okay, that makes sense. So get bounded range. It's like creating a new rectangle. I don't know. That's kind of how I think about it. Okay. But yeah, I think with that, we pretty much went through all of it. We should be an expert now, at least when it comes to selecting ranges. So if you have any questions about selecting ranges inside of an Excel worksheet, I'm going to kind of play around and see what it would look like if, well, I mean, I think it would be kind of obvious in a sense. I mean, if we want to do like a workbook or something like that, how would we do it if we want to get like a workbook, a different workbook or a different sheet? I mean, the sheet's pretty obvious, I think. I think the workbook one would be maybe a little bit more complicated because I would imagine this is only unique to that one, but I'd have to look exactly to see kind of what's going on with that. But that's probably going to be for a later video. I know in the next video, what we're going to be covering is actually like taking cell values, um, grabbing them from the Excel worksheet, and then also populating them, manipulating them a little bit, and then also looping through the values. Looping is going to change a little bit compared to what we've done inside of VBA, but personally, I don't think it's too bad. In fact, I think it actually gives us a little bit more leverage in a certain regard, but I'll kind of explain that when the video definitely comes up. Regardless, though, again, if you have questions about, selecting ranges, please put them down in the comments below. I want to make sure I can, ideally get them answered. Also, on a second note, I am making, well, I kind of made a Discord channel. So if you have questions, I'm probably going to start redirecting people there just because it's a lot easier to type there than compared to what is it? YouTube. YouTube kind of makes it a little bit challenging. And then also, if you could, please make sure to like the video. We always appreciate the support. And if you're not already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you keep getting these regular updates as we're releasing new topics on the Office API and Python. What else? VBA, some point, C#, and all that kind of fun stuff. So thanks again for watching, everybody. We will see you in the next video.